I believe we're ready to welcome our next speakers. Abhishek Sen, the CEO and co-founder of Number 8, and Dirash Mata, Deputy General Manager and Senior Director of Ad Monetization at Outfit 7. Guys, do we have you in the studio? Hello, hello.
Yes, you do. How you doing? Good afternoon.
Good. How are you?
Very good. Doing very well.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us today in this beautiful Kyiv studio. Have you been to Kyiv, by the way?
No, it's a place to visit. It's on our to-do list, as we all have probably wish lists to travel right now because I'm trying to get out. So,
yeah, fair enough. By the way, what's going to be the first place to go when all the borders are open and all the restrictions are lifted?
Barcelona for me.
Barcelona.
Absolutely.
Slovenia for me, but yeah, somewhere in the
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that sounds actually very nice. And the weather is nice there. So hopefully that's going to happen very soon for you guys. Okay, thank you again for joining us today. And we're very excited to listen to your Fireside chat. Good luck.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Abby, co-founder and CEO of Number 8. Very glad to be here today. And yeah, excited to be talking to someone from a really large game publisher, to be, to have a chat and get his insights on how things are evolving, why this is a very opportune moment for brands to really get into gaming. So thank you again for joining us. D, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Oh, thanks, Abhi. Hi, guys. I'm D. Everybody, my actual name is Dheeraj Mata, but everybody calls me D. So feel free to call me just D. I've been in the ad space for over 10 years now, but been a part of Outfit 7 family for just around 3 years. Over the past 3 years, I've been involved in several projects around the digital ecosystem, working in several things around programmatic advertising, direct sales, mediation. But currently, I'm focusing on building this brand sales ecosystem within our company. And that's basically what I've been doing for a few months, few years now in Outfit 7.
Thanks a lot, Ian. And when I first spoke with you, and how Outfit 7, as you mentioned, has taken a lot of the ad tech stack in-house, that was very fascinating to learn how we actually built this entire ecosystem or the infrastructure in-house. So we'll probably touch into that. So as we usually do at Number 8 in terms of our tradition with any panels, we always start with a pop quiz. So hopefully what we'll do is we'll have a short multiple choice question. If you get the right answer, if you have the right answer, tell us, just write it in the comment section. You'll have 20 seconds to answer this. And there's a prize for the first 3 people who write their answers. So what was the first ever game launched on a mobile phone? These are your 4 options, and the 20-second timer starts now. All right, cool. Hopefully you all had a chance to answer A, B, C, or D. Let's get on with the session. So again, we'll dig right into it. D, thanks again for joining. So why should we talk about brands and games today?
That's a good question, Abhi. I think the question we should ask is, why shouldn't we talk about brands and games? The obvious answer is more and more users are spending their time on mobile devices these days. And if brands wants to reach to these new demographic of users, they cannot continue advertising on the traditional ways of advertising, like billboards, TV, or traditional media. So they have to embrace the change that the users are embracing themselves. And by talking about it, we will be able to burst any myths around in-app advertising, gaming advertising, and all the complicated things around it, which is technically not that complicated. And the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we can make publishers who want to venture into this brand sales side of things, and also brands who wants to venture into the digital advertising part of gaming side of things, much more easier and smoother. That's at least what I would think about. How would you see this?
I think it's interesting to talk about because one of our teammates and I were just talking about, just because you do ads doesn't mean it has to end up in a really shitty user experience. That's one of the posts we want to run on social media. And that's so gaming is it's a fantastic place because you have very high, as you mentioned, engaged users and players who are really spending time and it's fun. So why wouldn't brands actually take advantage of that opportunity. So I think there's a lot of things to do with multiple placements, etc. So to really deliver an immersive and engaging experience. So I think it's a really good opportunity. So yeah, you definitely hit it on the right.
Exactly. Like, let me ask you this, right? When was the last time you saw an ad on a web atmosphere or web ecosystem that you actually remember what the ad was about?
Yeah, anytime I get asked those, have you watched this ad in the last 15 days? I'm like,
No
yes,
idea.
maybe, I don't know.
Exactly. So this is why, like we are in a very privileged position these days that we have an opportunity to create an ecosystem where we can allow brands to engage with the users and the gamers, and the users and the gamers to engage with the brands in a very native atmosphere where we can create like a high impact for the brands for their advertising space. And it's not like running in the background or not knowing what the ad is about, because most of the ads in the mobile ecosystem is in the front. People can see what is happening. They have to either engage with it. So it has a much bigger impact. And going back to your first question, why shouldn't we talk about it? This is what we want to try and achieve, create a seamless seamless experience for the brands and the users. And as you said earlier, if it's done right, then it can have a much bigger impact and awareness for everybody.
For sure. I mean, Mary Meeker puts out this report every year for the consumer trends, and you see, and it's thinking like recently 4.2 hours for a time we spend in-app. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that is a significant portion of our data spending in-app, and a significant portion of that is actually going to be in gaming. So I think it's so much more than just a checkbox that, typically brands should really think of it as. And so it's really gone mainstream, and the diversity in audience that you have in terms of who are the actual players, it mimics what a Nike or Reebok or Adidas or I'm just calling out some brand names over here, but you can think of how diverse gaming as an audience will actually deliver. And also I'd like to say, one thing is post IDFA, what we're seeing is that, I think brand advertising will give a much stabler source of revenue for publishers, given the fluctuations and the risks that we can probably expect to see. So I think that's one different area to look out for.
Absolutely.
So, you've of course, given your Outfit 7 hat on, you've been in the space for a while. So from, being able to reach out to advertisers, getting their interest, getting the buy-in for your, massive inventory at Outfit 7, what are the challenges that you face when you actually go out and sell your inventory or Outfit 7's games?
Generally speaking, if you're a gaming company or an app company who has not geared up towards brand advertising, you might face a lot of challenges. For us, specifically speaking, we've been preparing this for some time now, and we have given this a try a few times in the past, but now this is the first time we are actively pursuing this. And the biggest concern or challenge that we face most of the time is like, we feel that when we start talking to buyers and planners, they have a fragmented impression of what advertising means within in-app and especially within gaming companies. And the biggest pushback we get is like, they are trying to achieve the exactly same results that they see on the web atmosphere in the app ecosystem. And this is a bit weird because we have an opportunity to present something unique, something probably better than what is available on the websites. But people want the exact same thing because they're just comfortable with it. They've been so used to it. And we are trying our best to educate them and tell them that this is something different, something much more immersive, and something we would like to push towards. And that's why, like, talking to you guys more and partners like yourself who have been working with us on developing the tools and techniques to help publishers like Outfit 7 and others achieve or get closer to the goal,
Definitely.
But this is like my experience working for Outfit 7 specifically. But you've been working in the ad tech space and been working with other publishers at the same time. So how do you see other publishers are dealing with, or what challenges they are facing when talking to agencies and advertisers?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So when we engage, so we are members of IAB UK and IAB Tech Lab. That's probably a lot of people on this call, or a lot of publishers, especially in gaming. And gaming is very interesting because there's a difference in, because in the inventory, brands are looking to target people in a specific way, in terms of they think of audiences, they think of audience buys.
But from a gaming perspective, what is actually being sold from a targeting option perspective, it's not the same language. So brand wants to reach fitness enthusiasts, runners, joggers, people who can buy and use their services and products. But as a game, if your inventory is telling you app category, the brand's not speaking the same language. The brand's not buying casual gamers. The brand doesn't even understand. Brands typically, from my understanding, it's a checkbox on the DSP side. Yeah, maybe gaming, but then what's behind that? What's under the hood? And that's a big challenge that we've seen. That's what we're trying to do. And because gaming still remains a mystery. And that's why I think even with IAB UK, there's a lot of sessions on how do you actually inform or educate brands on what is the actual opportunity and who are these gamers. So that's quite a challenge, I would say. And one thing we've seen is that maybe that's an observation. We've had some feedback is hyper casual games might not be well suited for brand advertising because again, it's a very high churn gaming environment. If the game is going to last for, let's say, a long period of time, then you have more opportunity to build an audience. But if it's just performance, you click to download and that's it. But if you want to build an engaging, immersive experience, which is a significant portion of games out there, it's a fantastic opportunity, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, brands themselves face this as a challenge, as you rightly mentioned, it's a mystery, right? So when you think about the biggest challenges that advertisers face, and now I'm talking about from their perspective, like how advertisers see things, there is a bit of lack of education in certain ways that they don't understand the gaming atmosphere or ecosystem as it's a mystery. But at the same time, they need to, there are only very few successful brands out there in the gaming side of things who are able to talk to agencies and actually close some deals because of hyper casual becoming so quick to churn people in and out. You cannot really build a sustainable brand business out of it. But Outfit 7 has been in a very privileged position. And when we started talking to agencies, initially we thought it would be a really hard task. But you can see maybe in one of the slides, if you just scroll through, we noticed that quite a few top agencies have started focusing on their gaming divisions. So they establish unique gaming divisions to focus on entertainment and gaming. So for example, Publicis started Publicis Play, Dentsu started with D Games. So these agencies are understanding the importance of the value of users who are engaging with the gaming content, and they want to try and attract them. And it's part of our job as publishers and a part of the job of the ad tech industry itself to make it as easy and smooth for them to make it happen, Yeah,
I just have this slide over here for you. I think you.
Yeah. So, basically what happened is when we started looking into the opportunities around how we can bring brands and mobile together, we had to go back to the drawing board and think, how can we make this happen? So one of the things we did is we opened our games to some innovative and interactive ad experiences. So from this example that you can see here, when you put Tom to sleep, so Tom is it's a Tamagotchi app. So it's a virtual pet and you're playing with Tom. He gets tired and you put him to sleep. And when you put him to sleep, he starts dreaming. And in the dream, you can put an ad, which can be a static image, or you can put a video of a new movie that is coming up, for example. And this creates a huge engagement and a buzz for the brands. And this is the kind of experience I'm talking about. So if you compare this to an experience that you see in the web world versus when you're within the game, it has a completely different experience as a user.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what do brands get? So we also came up with another unique format. We call it as mini game, but it's like a puzzle game where you as a user is interacting with the brand and you're putting the puzzle pieces together. And once the puzzle pieces are put together, you see this, hey, congratulations, you have completed. But at the back of it is an ad, right? And this gives an opportunity for users to engage with the content and is a real true example of driving high engagement. So for example, this format drives more than 1 minute of engagement from the user. And I'm being diplomatic here, but it's about 2.5 minutes sometimes. And this is some of the unique formats we as a company have come up with to encourage brands to come into gaming and not have them to experience something really complicated. It's a very simple way of doing it. People enjoy playing with it and brands enjoy engaging with our users as well.
Definitely, definitely. And, it's that opportunity you talk about, building that loyalty, because, you're building a user base to deliver that, because you feel investing in long-term growth. And as a brand, usually your audience. Brand is not, top brands, they know who their audience is. So you have a really massive opportunity to build, because these are highly engaged users. They're going to come back over and over again to play. So you have a really good opportunity to actually build that, adoption, and also likability and awareness also for your brand. So if so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what happened from an advertising, do you see, I think I'm going to touch back on this a little bit. Do you see brand advertising as a stabilizing force as IDs go away? Because we've been hearing about, one is the opportunity, of course, we touched on that. What's happening today is that, do you see brand advertising able to stabilize it from the revenue impact that potentially going to be hitting or not? Yeah, I'd like to understand a little bit on that.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of questions, sub-questions within this, but well, to be very honest with you, yes, I think so. One of the reasons, or one of the key reasons why Outfit 7 started focusing primarily on brand advertising is also as a backup for any drops that we might see due to the lack of IDFA and device IDs in the future. We know that, Outfit 7 is a very highly compliant company, and we keep a very close eye on all the different compliances. And we know that IDFA is just the start of making things more and more stricter in the future. And by moving into the area of direct sales, and I'm not saying we are not doing what we are currently doing, but this is an add-on top of what we are doing. We build a relationship with brands and agencies, and that gives publishers like Outfit 7 a lot more control over the ads that we run on our users. And also it gives us better control over the data that we are sharing with our agencies and brands, and prevents us from any unnecessary data leakages. And this is one of the key reasons, irrespective of how IDFA is going to make the ecosystem change in the future. Just working with brands gives us more control over the user experience that we show to our users, but also what data we are sharing with our third-party partners that we are working with.
Especially, yeah, if you can tap into the first-party data that you have and the importance of that. And I think that leads itself very well to the next part is, a lot of companies have this issue. A lot of publishers would have an issue with, all right, first, how do I build up my data strategy? First party, what is this? And it'd be great to understand briefly, how y'all have approached it to a certain degree.
So first party data is your USP, it's your unique selling point. And this is what makes you different from others. And this is why first party data is really, really important. And who best knows your users than yourself, right? And this is our approach to what our first party data means. And going back to the question you asked, how do publishers who do not have any idea about first party data can build the first party data strategy, right? Start small. You don't have to make it complicated. It is not complicated. You just have to think about what do brands really want? What are they asking for? You have to think about things like, who are your users? Where is your key demographic of your users? What time of the day they engage most with your apps? Where do they spend the most amount of time within your apps? And then try leveraging these data points. Now, from a technical point of view, if you're starting off and you don't know how to connect these data points within advertising, work with some of your trusted partners like Number 8, for example, and build this kind of connections between these data points in a way that this can be used for advertising purposes. Now, Outfit 7 has been in a very privileged position because one, we have been not just a gaming company, but we have kind of built the whole brand around.
That was the most interesting piece, by the way. When I first heard, wow, you've actually brought a lot of stuff in-house that's traditionally done out of house. But yeah, sorry, please continue.
No, it's exactly. So what we try to do is one of the things we are in a very privileged position because we are considered as a mixed audience company. So we have contextual advertising happening where we don't touch any data, but then users we consider as adults. We have our first party data. We've been trying to leverage this as much as possible, but it's unfortunately from my experience, there's no sophisticated way to enrich this. And one of the reasons behind this is that the ad tech was never involved or invested to support some of these things in the digital or in the app atmosphere or ecosystem, because this was never asked for. But some of these things are changing now. I mean, few companies like yourself, for example, who have started understanding the importance of first-party data and brand advertising and trying to connect them and building tools to help publishers leverage this. This is quite new, and I'm quite glad this is happening. And you want it or not, this is going to happen in the future further, and people will understand the importance of bringing first-party data, brands, and everything together and connect all the dots together.
Yeah, and building on that, when you get a request from a brand, right? What are some of the KPIs that, when you actually sell, let's say, a specific campaign, what are they looking for from a campaign return? Like, what are the ROIs, KPIs that they're looking for?
Sure. So basically, there is no much difference between if you're in a web atmosphere or you're in an in-app ecosystem. The ask from the brands and agencies are the same, right? And you have to understand that if somebody is spending money, they want to get the best return on investment on the bucks they spend. So whatever they ask is technically fair, right? So what we do is we have standard metrics like viewability, engagement. In engagement, we talk about interactiveness, how much of a time that the user is spending interacting with the ad format, how much time the user is spending on the screen, how many clicks they are generating. So these are some of the basic KPIs we try to stick with. As I said, we don't have to complicate it and give them too many unnecessary data points. But the key here is understanding your users and trying to bring the right brands to the right users. So some of the brands that we target, which works really well with our brands, is like entertainment companies, movie companies, toy manufacturing companies. They work really well with us, right? And knowing who our users are and what their demographic is.
That's very important from a brand safety perspective as well, given that at least from your case, brand safety is very important from, brands that are coming in also for yours, because your user base is kid friendly. So yeah, it becomes very important.
Absolutely. The secret here is to creating your first party data in a way that you don't touch personal identifiers, without hindering any personal data. This is
agree more. Could not agree more. Absolutely. So as we're coming closer, so you're in a very unique position, Dave. And I mean, yes, you are in a very fancy place. I know you showed me your office the other day, so you have a nice. But from a position of a publisher that has the luxury of having a lot of your infrastructure in-house, this is a great play, for you to tell some of the audience members who are listening in, publisher, what are some final recommendations that you have for them to know in terms of getting started to attract brand advertisers and keeping it simple?
Sure. I think, this is something that I tell all the time I speak to people, keep it simple. It's not as complicated as you think. Luckily, we are not trying to create something new. We are just trying to replicate what has been already done in the web ecosystem for years. So trying to understand that, investing in some tech that allows you to support direct sales is number one. Number two, you have to start planning how best to use or leverage your first party audience. And now, if you don't know how to do it, then I would recommend you talking to some of the partners in the ecosystem who have been doing this, who can support you build this and break them into chunks. You don't have to do all of it at once. Like when we started, okay, how can we just target a single app? Then how then can we target cluster of apps? How can we target a specific demographic like male or female, So this is how we kind of started by breaking into smaller chunks. And finding the right partners to help you support and put this together is one of the most important things. And if you are a small publisher and you're thinking of going into this direction, you have to start talking and thinking about the future and planning for the next 2-3 years. As I said, you want it or not, this is going to happen anyway. So it's best to gear up for those changes. And there are so many people in the industry who are talking about this and who are working on this. So talk to your peers, talk to your colleagues, help each other out, because the more people start doing this as publishers, the more brands will feel secure coming into the in-app digital ecosystem. And in simple terms, I can say, let's work together and make more money. That's basically the idea.
Yeah, no, it's making it a friendly environment. Absolutely, definitely.
And if the audience has any brands and agencies listening to this, I would like to say that this is not as complicated as you think. We have several innovative things happening that we can offer to the brands. Sometimes it might not be suitable for you, or it might not be the right thing. but there are a lot of new things happening, and Abhi, I know when I first started talking to you, I heard that you guys have something called as habitual audience. And I was like, what is this habitual audience? Let me understand a little bit more about. And this was something very interesting. So do you mind sharing what it is?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'll just share my slides over here. So what we do is, at number 8, briefly, because it's, we talked about first party data and tapping into ID-less inventory. So what we do, helping brands understand who is their audience really, and helping publishers actually make this inventory that is ID-less targetable. So we combine on-device computing. What the hell is that? On-device computing is basically, you're doing all the processing on the device, which is in your app itself on the smartphone. And we combine those techniques with sensors, so accelerometers, location, compass, all these data points that are in our devices today. We blend these two to give us these targeting capabilities that are either in the moment, which we call live context. You say, you know what, this specific user is running, commuting, shopping while they're playing a game, or based on specific habits of when they're actually playing a game, you have ID-less audiences. And that's the two kinds of targeting that all of a sudden as a brand, if you're buying, yes, I know frequent shoppers, I understand joggers. You're not looking at who is a casual gamer, who is a mid-core gamer, because I, as a brand, I don't know who the hell is a casual gamer. I don't even know gaming. So I won't even know casual gamers. But I do understand the habits. I do understand, because that's what I sell my shoes to, goods and products. That's what I sell in my customer journey maps. So that's what we're doing with how we're bridging that gap to make the inventory that gaming publishers have that's very valuable, making it accessible for brands to say, you know what, I trust this data. I can actually understand where my money is going to go in, and I can get value from that. And that taps into, it builds that friendly ecosystem to say, you know what, yes, you can come in, the shop's open for buying. That was a great way to say it, I think you mentioned. So that's what we do at number 8. So yeah, it's in terms of bridging these two worlds and the languages.
And this makes really good sense because, when we first started talking about games, because games have very few screens that you navigate between, trying to create your first party audiences, where you understand their behavior can be very challenging. And having a behavioral or like a habitual audience data points created can help us target our users in a much more accurate way as well at some point, and might not be just for us, but for definitely other publishers as well.
Definitely, I think you touched on quite a few points on the education piece is very important because, that's that, hey, listen, I think one of our teammates, she presented to IB UK on who the hell is a gamer? Because that is still a myth. Who is a gamer is still a myth. So brands, they've always thought of gamers being as 14-year-old kid, in this case, most likely a guy who's been sitting in his basement and playing games. But that myth has just gone out the door, right? So it's all right, so let's actually understand who is this audience. And then, of course, you're making your inventory more targetable and accessible. So yeah, thank you so much for your tips. I hope a lot of publishers who were on this channel, they learned a lot, because I was very fascinated when I first learned about how you built up that tech ecosystem or infrastructure in-house at Outfit 7. So that was pretty fascinating. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, Abhishek at number8.ai, and Dheeraj, his email is right there, dheeraj.matta@outfit7.com. So thank you for listening, everyone. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the insights, for the tips. Actually, it was really useful. I'm not sure if you'll be able to share the presentation afterwards so people can actually have a look through it once again and learn a few more things.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Actually, I have a few questions for you. So you've mentioned actually all the tips and stuff, but like, what are the biggest, the most common mistakes that basically a game developer can do, like when attracting brand advertisement? Like, what do they not understand or not paying attention to when actually searching for brand presence?
There are so many mistakes publishers can do when trying to attract brands. The first thing I would say is stop selling. It's not about trying to get your money. I mean, ultimately that's the goal, but ideally you have to understand what your client really wants. So when I go into a meeting with a brand, I try to understand what their KPIs and goals are and how we can meet them. And there are some instances where we may not be able to meet them. And then I can say, hey, you know what? I know a publisher who can actually do this. Maybe you should talk to them. And then I introduce them to the other publisher. But if I can help them meet them, it's a lot more smoother conversation from there on. And then the second most common mistake I see people make is they just overcomplicate things. I remember when we first started and we got a proposal for a pitch, we created like a 35 deck slides to try to convince the client that this is the best way of advertising with an app, and it doesn't have to be so complicated because it is not so complicated. So you just have to simplify some things, and it's a lot more smoother journey if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And in terms of communication, because obviously, like, for example, when developers and publishers are communicating, there is always this the question of freedom of when you can trust and not your partner, or you should maybe push your idea and stuff. Like, how does it work with in between them two? Like, if you're a game publisher, for example, you're working with a brand, how do you find this balance in between? If it makes sense.
I'm not fully sure if I understand, but let me attempt to answer this. I think the trust part comes when you are comfortable working with third-party companies who can validate your inventory. And this is where we as a company, for example, Outfit 7 is very open to asking our clients to use any validation tool to validate the inventory they're buying to make sure that they're happy with what they're buying, right? And then rather than saying just work with Outfit 7 and trust our first-party data, we can say to them, hey, why don't you work with number 8 and see what they have and validate our data? And that way, an independent third-party company helps them validate what they're buying, hence building the overall trust. And the next thing is, I think the whole community around gaming publishers is so close and so small that we can always depend on each other. So if you come up with a problem, you always go and talk to the people who are already doing it. And I don't want to name other publishers, but I speak to like 4 or 5 publishers on a regular basis, publishers and app developers, talking about similar issues they're facing, similar concerns they're facing. And it always helps clarify some or put certain things into perspective. And that always helps.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, pretty much covered the question. Thank you very much. Dear audience, if you have more questions for the guys, please feel free to use it.
Say one thing.
Sure, go on.
Poll. So we had a poll early on. I just got a note that apparently, unfortunately, no one got the right answer. A lot of people answered Snake as the first mobile game. The answer is actually Tetris. I had actually guessed Snake as well when I first Googled the answer. The answer was actually Tetris. So that was in mid-90s. So sorry, everyone.
I was actually thinking about Tetris. I was like, nah, probably shouldn't. Oh, well. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's, you see, you learn something new every day. That's true.
Hey, Tetris. Absolutely. Let's go back to playing that.
Cool. Thank you very much again for joining us in the studio. Guys in the audience, please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask like the guys in the Q&A chat or direct message them on the Dublin Hub. Or there's actually a very nice number 8 booth on the Virtual Expo. You can also go there and check out what's happening there with the company, meet with company employees and have lots of productive work.